Hey, what's up, y'all? Wanted to take a quick moment. I'm sitting here in the Atlanta airport, waiting clearance to depart for my destination. So have quite a bit of time just kind of sitting here relaxing in the Sky Club. I wanted to answer a question that a lot of people have been asking, and that's what framework do I trade? What is the strategy that I use in order to attack and really take trades and assess the market each and every day? So I wanted to take a moment to kind of walk you through what I do from a framework perspective and just to let you know, like my daily routine, the thing that I go through every single trading session, whether I'm trading the PM session, whether I'm trading the New York session, I go through the same process each and every time that I am approaching the market. So I wanted to share just kind of a brief overview of what it looks like. And then from there, if you have any questions, of course, you can join my free community, my free school community. And then from there, I can address your questions further. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into my strategy, the thing that I deal with each and every day as I'm approaching these charts. So I'm going to take a look at this and we're going to pick out a tool that is clean. I primarily trade the futures. I primarily trade ES or NQ futures, but for the sake of this exercise, let's go to Apple. Let's go see what Apple's talking about. And so I'm going to clear my chart and I'm going to hide the one of the indicators that I use. And here's what we're going to start off with. We're going to start off with a blank chart. Everything that I do, I start off on a higher time frame. So I will start off on the 4 hour time frame. And so as I'm evaluating the market, I kind of want to know where the most recent auction that's taken place. What's the most recent auction that's taken place? I'm an auction market theory supporter, and that's the way that I approach the market. So I want to know what's happening in the most recent part of the market. And typically that takes me back roughly 3 weeks or so. And so I will take a look at roughly 3 to 4 weeks worth of data on the charts. And so, we're at Friday, July the 10th was the last day of the market. So I'll go back roughly 3 to 4 weeks and to kind of assess the market from there. So that being the case, this gives me my data pool for the most recent, 3 to 4 weeks worth of data. And from there, I use a tool that's called the volume profile. And for this particular higher time frame exercise, I will use the visible range volume profile. What it does, it allows me to see what's happening from a participant perspective by price. And so this gives me the various levels of involvement in the market by price and how many people were engaged in the market at those various price points. And so if you look at my chart over here to the right, you'll see the visible range volume profile. And as a part of this exercise, you'll start to see these things called nodes. And so we see a node that's here, see a little node that's here, see this node that's right here. This is the most um, transactions that's taken place over this time frame. You see a little bitty, kind of peak right here, and then we see this major node towards the bottom. And so as I'm looking at these charts, these are the levels in which people were actively engaged in the market, and I can look at it by price level to determine which prices attracted the most involvement, the most attention. And so these become kind of my areas of interest, my zones of interest. When you're looking at trading is not a singular line. You don't put single lines on the chart and expect price to react exactly at those particular lines. Sometimes they do, but in general, you want to kind of highlight various zones and then allow those zones to become your zones of interest and not relying on single lines. So that's kind of my approach to the market. I'm an auction market theory advocate. And so that's kind of the basis of the way that I approach the market. So I'm looking for acceptance, I'm looking for rejection at different zones in the market. And so with that being the case, I'm going to highlight these various zones of interest based off of where we are in the market. So right here, like I mentioned, this was the most recent area where there was significant volume. So I want to highlight that here on my chart. And so I kind of give rectangles as the zones of interest. And so wherever you see these zones of interest, that's where significant transactions were taking place in the market. And so I will highlight these across the various levels of the chart. And so for each one of the peaks that I identified and I showed, I will give it a rectangle so that we can identify when we drop down to the lower time frames. And so this big, kind of range area right here, consolidation, we can highlight that. And I want to make sure that I show that this was an area, this price point between 294.75 and 299.66. This is where a lot of transactions took place. And we ultimately see that there was a springboard from this zone once we got to what day is this? July the 2nd. And so I've highlighted this zone, and you can highlight the other zones, but I kind of like to keep them closer to where price action is taking place. And because the most recent price action has not exceeded this particular level, I'm going to allow this to be kind of the upper level last zone that we take a look at. And so that's what I start off with. And then also I want to highlight, kind of where the most recent day was ultimately the high of the previous day. So right here, we already see it based off of this green line, but I like to highlight those with yellow. And I will highlight kind of the swing high and the swing low points. So this one was right here. We'll highlight this one here. This gives me targets, liquidity targets, where might we find stop losses and so on and so forth. So I use these to kind of visually mark these areas, but then I will confirm because I'm also an order flow tool user. I use Bookmap as my order flow tool, so I can actually confirm these levels by cross-referencing the Bookmap. But for sake of this particular exercise that I'm going through right now, I like to highlight the swing highs and the swing lows. And then also, I will also, kind of anchor a VWAP from the swing high and the swing low levels, just so that I can have some visual understanding of where buyers took control or where sellers took control. And so when I do that, it allows me to understand that in between these particular swing lows and swing high anchor points, uh, below it is kind of a battleground. And so we see that there is this back and forth over the past several days in this zone. It lets us know we call it a bar fight. There is aggressive buyers and aggressive sellers going back and forth. So anything in this area can be considered, kind of a neutralized, kind of back and forth between aggressive buyers and sellers. And so we're looking for price to either break out to the upside or break out below this particular level, where in between we see this aggressive buyer and seller interaction taking place in the market. So I do this on my 4-hour chart. These become the various levels that are my levels of interest. And then what happens is I drop down to the 15-minute chart, and you'll see when I drop down to the 15-minute chart, um, these become the ultimate levels that I want to pay attention to for taking trades. And so once I get off the 4-hour, once I finish marking my zones on the 4-hour chart, I no longer need the visible range volume profile, so I will hide it. And then I will go to what is called the fixed range volume profile, which is also shown over here on this toolbar. And I will find the fixed range volume profile, and I want to kind of highlight the last several sessions. So going into Monday, this will be the previous session that took place. I will also highlight the previous day session as well. I want to see what's taking place and where value was ultimately accepted and rejected over the most recent days. And so inside of this particular highlighted blue and yellow zones are where 68% of the transactions have taken place over, this would be for Friday, so this would be for Thursday, this would be for Wednesday. So there was a similar level of activity between buyers and sellers and areas of interest over the past several days. And so this gives me just kind of points of reference as I'm looking at trades that exist out here or potential opportunities in the market. So over the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 day, the past week, Apple traded within this particular area, value of 68% of activity took place in this area, this area slightly up a little bit, and then we saw this move on Friday. So that gives me just kind of a point of reference that we're in a range for the most part in this area. It also is confirmed by the gray rectangles that I created on my higher time frame, which was the 4-hour chart. So this kind of sets me up for what I'm looking for as we attack potential trade opportunities on Monday. So what would I be looking for? Well, let me zoom in, right? So as I zoom in, I know that the edge of this particular zone becomes a level of interest. I refer to this as a transportation network. I look at this entire makeup as a transportation network where I consider these gray rectangles to be cities. I consider these yellow lines as liquidity. I consider those to be a gas station because as you're looking at it from a transportation perspective, you fuel up, you look for opportunities to gas up and get the fuel that you need to go from one level to the next at gas stations. And so that's what I look at liquidity as. And then also within our cities, which are these rectangles, I refer to the session volume profile nodes, these blue and yellow areas as neighborhoods. And so this is a neighborhood within this particular city. This in the case of Atlanta, this could actually be the city of Atlanta right here. It could be Buckhead, it could be Midtown, whatever I want to refer to it as. But this gives me an understanding of this is where the concentration of commerce took place, where the busyness of a major city was taking place in this zone on Friday. And so as we are approaching on Monday, I can look and see that price came up to this level, it rejected, and it came back and closed where? Right at the edge of this city, right at the edge of this swing high anchored volume weighted average price. And so as we are attacking and evaluating opportunities for Monday, I want to see whether or not we break back inside of this city. And if we break back inside of the city and accept, then there's a potential that we can go from here, break inside. Maybe we accept in here, go a little back and forth. And then the ultimate goal would be to traverse back over to the lower side of the city. And then when we get to this lower edge, do we accept at the bottom and then come up? Or do we break outside, retest, and then we look to head to this next city? And so that's kind of the exercise that I play. I look for multiple scenarios as I'm approaching the trading day. And so from this perspective, this is my level of interest. This is where we ended on Friday. And so I will look on Monday to see if we break back inside or do we hold outside of the zone, outside of the city, quote unquote, the city, build up some acceptance here, and then continue up. And so this is one scenario. This is another scenario. Another scenario is we can, and I gave it initially, break down inside, accept, and then come back up and break out. We can also see here that we can drop down to this side and target the city below. So maybe I have three scenarios going into Monday: accept outside and continue up, break back inside of this zone and head down and target the lower side of the city. A straight movement, kind of rejection down to this side, and ultimately, hit here and then bounce back up. So that gives me some scenarios that I can look at. I'm not going into my trading session guessing. So here are my scenarios going into Monday for Apple. If I was an Apple trader, I trade futures, but I do the same thing on the futures chart as well. And so this gives me my scenarios, and all you're doing now is waiting for confirmation of one of these scenarios to take place. And so this is the way I approach the market every single day, every single session. And if you're interested in learning more about how to apply this, I've given you kind of the 30,000-foot view of this. I haven't shared some of the, kind of order flow tool application that I also pair with this. But if you want to learn more about my smart trader framework and the way that I attack this each and every session, feel free to join my school community. It's free and you can learn more about what we're doing here within the smart trader framework. Look forward to sharing more with you and we'll talk soon. Take care.